live today again on IMAGINE podcast with Deane Haskell. Welcome, David.
Hey, thanks. I'm really glad to be here. I'm really appreciative of this podcast, and it's really nice to meet you in face to face
Yeah,
after all the emails. Yeah.
absolutely. And the thing that stood out is like all your titles of author, teacher, father, drummer, creative storyteller. We were talking off camera that I'm not a actual father, but I'm an uncle, and I try to be a heck of a mentor for our
Nice.
youth, especially our young men. So,
Uh-huh.
living in Japan, like, I mean,
Hmm.
tell me, man, where'd you grow up, and how'd you end up in what part of Japan are you in?
Okay, so I grew up in New England, around Boston area, until I was about 18. I ended up in California for a year. When I was 18, that's when I was learning how to drum. I went out there for drumming and went to school back in Massachusetts and then moved to Florida for a year. And I was working for the theme parks down there. I worked at Universal,
Okay.
and I also worked at Universal playing drums, and I worked in an office at Disney. And then I heard about an audition for Tokyo Disneyland for
Oh,
musicians.
nice.
So I was like, oh, Tokyo Disneyland, really? Okay, cool. I'll go there for 6 months, right? And that was back in 1998. Came to Tokyo for 6 months, then came back for another 6 months, back for another 6 months. And then before I knew it, I was just basically living in Japan. And I've been here pretty much ever since. I live in Chiba, which is a suburb of Tokyo, basically. And I go to Tokyo once or twice a week. It's maybe an hour away, something like that on the train.
Uh-huh.
And then last year I was doing some traveling. I spent time in Vietnam and Thailand and Indonesia. So I was out of Japan, but now I'm back. So
You can't see behind me, but behind me is my what I call enthuse. It's a painting, kind of like my brand, but you see the ring above my head, but behind there's
Mhm.
a cross, and then there's a Tao, yin and yang symbol below, fused together.
Yeah.
So,
Uh-huh.
I don't know about you, man, but uh, I was raised Roman Catholic, and here in Dayton, Ohio, and my father as well, and my mother a very stout Roman Catholic. But my father delved into Eastern philosophy and was really drawn to
Mm.
Taoism. So
Okay.
how'd you get obviously something enticed you to come to Japan and that side, and obviously you said you were just in Vietnam, all that. How was your
Mhm.
journey, like getting to a point where it's so attractive besides the Disney, and what have you experienced?
You mean spiritually speaking, that kind
Yes,
of thing, like love life?
yeah, sort of like,
Yeah.
what is that experience, compared to living in the United States, opened up for you?
Mm. Well, I sort of came into spirituality later because I write the stuff I write, the nonfiction I write is about trauma and healing inner child and that kind of stuff. So I did have a spiritual awakening back in 2020, and that was on the beach not far from here. And I don't have any particular religion. I was brought up Catholic as well. But maybe Taoism is maybe the closest to the way that I think, but not because of Japanese influence necessarily, more like the recovery community and that kind of thing, and just trying to like not die from all the addictions that I was suffering from, that kind of thing.
Mm.
So, yeah. And I'll tell you, the travels, Thailand was really interesting because they were all really interesting. Thailand is like heavily Buddhist, although the south of Thailand is pretty heavily Muslim. And I was in Indonesia, which is a straight up Muslim country, but Bali, which is part of Indonesia but feels like a totally different country, is straight up Hindu.
Mm.
And so there's really deep spiritual cores to all these places where like it's not just go to church on Sunday, something like that. It's more like, everyday stuff. You see it all the time, you hear it all the time. You see, in Thailand, I went up to this monastery up on a hill where the monks would hang out, and I'd go up there and watch the sunset and that kind of thing. And yeah, it's really amazing. But for me in Japan, it's more about the nature. I go to the beach, I go to the local park and stuff and do a little exercise and a little reflection of that kind of stuff. So,
Nice, nice. It is on my bucket list. I lived in Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles, and
hmm
have been journeyed to 30 different countries, some of them multiple times. But as you
hmm
described Bali,
ah,
Vietnam, but Japan's really on my list. I definitely want to go to Tokyo. And those two how you're describing is making me interested to
hmm
go just because of that energy, that philosophy, and how I'm
yeah.
fascinated by cultures, energies, and the vibe that you
Oh,
feel,
you
right?
got it. Come on out. Yeah. And Southeast Asia is really cheap for you can travel around, you can stay cheap, you can fly cheap. But Japan too. Now's the time to come to Japan because the yen is really in the toilet. And
Uh-oh.
so your dollar is going to go a long way if you come to Tokyo now.
Okay.
Like a lot of friends from the West Coast are coming out now for the first time. They've never come to Japan,
Yeah.
but it's easy, especially from LA. I mean, it's a 9 hour flight and it's just dirt cheap. They're like all talk, oh yeah, it's so cheap. It's like, well, not for us. Not if you're earning yen. It's not as cheap as
Oh,
that.
yeah,
But
right.
yeah,
It's all relative when you
right.
crosses that back way. Um, so cool. So, my podcast, Dean, I'm sure you've seen it, is that it's all about mentors, healthy lives, and community. And I think that
hmm
when you speak of addiction, and you speak of
hmm
challenges in our societies, which, there you living in Japan, and I'm sure it's just a vibe and energy that's, man, I can only imagine. I'm so excited to experience it. Um,
hmm
but and the podcast is dedicated to my late nephew, which we lost to addiction, and we know all this is tends to be deeper, emotional. As you mentioned,
hmm
potential trauma or just identity searching. You add
Yep.
those. You remember when you were a teenager, when those hormones go
Sure.
raging, you're trying to figure out you're supposed to be becoming and your brain. I moved to Chicago when I was 21, and nobody ever told me my brain was not fully developed yet. So
Oh,
I
right.
jumped all in, and like here I am. But tell me,
hmm
how did fitting in mean before recovery, and then what does it mean now?
Okay. And my condolences for your nephew,
Thank
first of
you.
all.
I appreciate
That's
that.
sad to hear. I lost a cousin to addiction as well. He was 29 when he died. So much too young. And I I had already mentioned the spiritual awakening, and that was the realization at that moment for me was that I should have died because I was overweight by 100 pounds more than I am now,
Wow.
doing all kinds of destructive stuff for a long time. And I got lucky. The physical health checked out, which really surprised me because the way that I was drinking and smoking and eating was just a way to just a reaction,
Yeah.
But fitting in for me, I never fit in since I was a kid, like ever. I lost my mom when I was 4,
God bless.
and then yeah, thank you. And I was told. So this is in my book too, in Wounded Angels. I write about this stuff because the trauma that hit me, the surrounding her death. I was told when I was 9 years old that she had taken her own life, and that caused a real shame attack kind of thing, like this toxic sense of shame, dread.
Absolutely.
I already wasn't getting along with kids. I couldn't make or maintain relationships. I did not fit in anywhere. And I was also scapegoated by adults who were not healthy in their own right, but they weren't looking at their own shit,
Yeah.
And my
Yes.
dad was alcoholic as well. So fitting in for me, so never. And then I got deeply into addiction, and then it was just I was isolated. The last 11 years of that, I was a hermit. I was just shades closed, inside, didn't breathe the fresh air, just getting, barely living. I finally hit rock bottom about 8 years ago.
Mm.
Just couldn't stand it anymore. Was able to find some community and get off the drugs and alcohol. But that was like the first part. But then I still had codependency addiction, which is just as powerful.
Yes.
The people addiction, the whole like commander subordinate, um, controller compliant. Like if you were my mentor, and it's mentor in a negative way.
Yeah.
If you were my mentor and I was like, you were telling me I was doing a good job, then I'd be happy with myself. But if you weren't having a good day and whatever, and you said something negative, or if you didn't pick up my phone call or something, I would be like, oh, I must be a worthless piece of shit again.
Right.
So, that took another 3 or so years before I could start to address that. And that brought me to another rock bottom. And again, this was sort of mirroring the trauma from when I was little. And I started doing inner child work and all that stuff. And so that started to come together. But the bottom line of that was I didn't I hated myself and I disliked myself. Two very different things. Cause like the dislike, like I didn't want to know me. I was like,
Yeah.
everybody hates me and I do too. I can't stand myself. I'm always blowing up relationships. I'm this, I was scapegoating myself the way that I was scapegoated as a kid, continued on until I started doing the really deep inner child work. Then I started to fit in mostly because I was okay whether you liked me or not. I was okay with myself. And I liked myself and it suddenly didn't become such a priority that everybody has to like me because for the longest time I thought I wanted friends, but what I was looking for was like allies. I thought like I'm so unpopular. I need to grab onto you, Greg, and you got to be my friend because I need friends. I need help.
Right.
I need protection. I was getting bullied when I was a kid and that sort of bled into adulthood. So, um, I would just say I fit in now because I fit in with myself. I'm okay with me. And now people gravitate towards me. I do have friends. I have great friends. Four of us went to see Star Wars and IMAX a few weeks ago. I do, as I said, I go into Tokyo once or twice a week. That's to see friends.
Wonderful.
And yeah, that's that.
I have to, there's so much self-awareness and you've done so much growth. So congratulations. And
Thank
and
you.
I identify with it because I've done it myself. And I
Okay.
was also, you know, uh just a young, spry little kid running around with tons of energy. And I think my
Hmm.
parents indirectly, maybe not intentionally, but for whatever chance or the universe provided this name, they my name is Greg's, and the first time I learned the word what the word gregorious meant, I go, maybe that's I don't know how I was brought to be this label, but it kind of definitely identifies me and myself. I'm with you, you know, through the absence of connection, either like emotional or supportive, as a child. And,
Hmm.
we kind of bend or lead ourselves to things that to try to like distract us, wash over from food and drink and drugs and trying to
Yeah.
like numb or distract, like, like you were saying, what you were feeling,
Hmm.
who you were. And that awareness is obviously a huge step. And I found it fascinating, and congratulations that it was great that you broke it down into one level and then you broke it down to another level of awareness and addressed from, that addiction of like, seclusion and like piling all those things on of addictive things that are many we know that anybody can do, right? Shop, steal, right? Lie, whatever, eat, gamble, all those things. Um,
Yeah.
and then you become so, like that deep discovery. And I think the one thing that stands out to me, Deane, is that my history with a book I found called The Alchemist. And it was when
Hmm.
the gentleman just kind of took off on the road and walked his own path. And
Yeah.
and you do a lot of inner reflection, obviously. And it sounds like you've done a
Yeah.
ton. And so yeah, that's probably one of the things I encourage. It's a great book, obviously. Um, Pablo Coelho. And it
Mhm.
really set a perspective. And then I got my own journey. I got into discovered Joseph Campbell. and the power of myth.
Okay.
And so all the
Yeah.
storytelling and the rituals and, times before. And one of the things it always it fascinated me about the most common question you hear is, what is the meaning of life? And Joseph Campbell's
Hmm.
one statement, I'll just summarize it. It was so powerful. That's not the question. The question is, at your time and place in this world, and men before you and men after you will be asking, need to understand. The question is, what is the experience of being alive? What is your experience of being alive? And as opposed to a meaning. And I found my experience to be so, I guess I got so caught up in, like you said, these addictions, that I was so hard on myself and just almost numbing, that I kind of
Hmm.
was reacting out and trying to do. I became, I think, almost like an overperformer, trying to draw
Okay.
attention to myself to prove to others that I was worthy of interaction and self-worth. And
Hmm.
my journey took me through to go inward to my body. I'm a 35-year veteran, self-taught, no, educated trainer, but a physiotherapist. So I work with
Hmm.
people on a physiological level, and it's that body temple
Okay.
we talk about. And I'm sure there's a lot of
Yeah.
temples in Japan. And I think
Oh
that's
yeah.
a powerful metaphor for, as you said yourself, discovered, like, okay, I took it to the next level in that codependency. So after your codependency, um, you know, were there any, like, particular mentors or teachers and family member, like an unexpected influence that, like, help you guide
Well,
through, I mean, your darkest kind of seasons of this?
oh, plenty, plenty. Yeah. Just to give you a quick correction, I go by David.
Oh,
And I wanted to point out that I'll tell you one thing, that David Deane Haskell, there's a reason for that. There's a method to the madness why I'm going by this in my professional life.
yeah.
And that's because there's another writer out there named David Haskell, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning biology writer. He writes
Oh,
about like forests and stuff. So like if you Google David Haskell, you're never gonna find me.
yes.
So it's like I'm always going by David Deane Haskell. So I just wanted to point that out because I've been mentioning that on all the podcasts. It's like
Okay.
I'm not trying to go for the three names, except that like it's this algorithm thing, I swear. But
Sure.
it's also kind of honoring. It's my dad's name is Dean, so it's really cool too that's in there. And
That's nice.
there was a lot of repair in that relationship towards the end. That was a lifetime, that kind of thing. My dad was a mentor of sorts, but he was unwell. He struggled with alcohol and that kind of thing as well. Mentors in my life, yes, have had amazing people. One guy, and I'm just gonna. He's on the West Coast, and his name's Jordan. I've been saying he'll know who he is, but I haven't named his name. But today I'll say, hey, Jordan. He's a mentor of mine. Great friend, and also somebody that I've grown together with him. He's doing podcasts and talking about healing and inner child. He's a big IFS guy, which is similar. It's internal family systems as a therapy, which basically deals with those stuck parts in our body. And Jordan was a mentor right from day one when I finally quit the drugs and alcohol, who had so much patience because I was just a train wreck. I was defiant, angry. I wanted to kill everyone. My life was crap, and I wanted somebody to blame.
Yeah.
And I'd been, including myself and everybody else. And he got me started on the road to gratitude, which is something that is really fundamental. Even before I could start embracing any kind of spirituality, because I really couldn't at first. I had a problem with any kind of God that would screw things up so badly. I
Yeah.
didn't want to look at that. But Jordan talked about, well, what do you have to be grateful today? It's a really sunny day, right? Are you grateful that it's nice weather? Yeah, I guess I'm grateful that it's nice weather. It's like, well, do you have enough food? Are you starving today? No, no, I'm not starving. I definitely have food in the fridge. This basic stuff. And
Sure.
even if you're in a really bad space, it's okay to say, okay, most of this stuff really sucks today, but I also, can find a few things to be okay with. And, that was a big thing that that had to do with a mentor that I trusted, and learning to find people that I trusted was really tough. And I go by the motto, trust those who are trustworthy, right? Because you have to be careful.
Yes.
And
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
luckily I've run into some equally unwell people, because I don't believe in one way codependent relationships. I think it's a mutual dance that's going on, even if one person seems crazy and the other person seems okay. But it's like
Absolutely.
people are doing this with each other, and that doesn't make them bad people. It just means we're not necessarily seeing all the whole picture. But there are also bad actors out there, and I was talking to another guy about a woman who was seduced, and then this person stole all her money and stole her business and whatnot. So I mean, you've got cults. I was very susceptible to cults for a long time. Narcissists, really, bad people.
Yeah.
And so you have to be careful, because if you're looking around for help and people say get help, and yes, you need to get help, and you need to get mentors, and you need to get some kind of community around you.
That's
But you also have to start being discerning
yes.
and start find your own integrity, your own inner core. And from there, you can form healthy relationships that support rather than, order you around or anything like that.
I mean, that's a great, your friend Jordan. So shout out to Jordan if he hears this. Um, you know, ever since we know that life pressures in America, and you mentioned gratitude, um, I think that those were, that between with gratitude as well as appreciation was in my 50s, and now I'm in my 60s, and the
No,
attitude,
really?
yeah, I'm 63, and
Okay.
the word for me right now is precious.
Okay.
These moments, and I think I go back to when you talk about like, oh, life's not good, whatever, it's not treating me fair, blah blah blah, and it's stuff that you
Hmm.
create in your own head because you're assuming
Hmm.
if you see outside of your door or through this little thing we call this uh, a view to the world, which is completely morphing our self identity and understand right and reality through our little devices,
Hmm.
is that there's so much abundance. If you live in the United States and you make
Hmm.
$35,000 a year, you are the in the 1%. You're a 1%er of the world. There,
Yep.
people here. We get, I've always said, I think we're just kind of spoiled in what we have, and the real tragedy is this energy of messaging and instantaneous notions of blabbing stuff out as opposed to you actually, like you said, coming across people in person and having the talk and literally, learning to like trustworthy, right? You have to have experience in person. And, everybody, there's a lot of people that obviously, I come from a point of my addictions, I think, and my constant search and my overcompensation from maybe a lack of emotional support that maybe I was just born that I needed more or even above average. But, we all deal with the same stresses of modern day life, and
Hmm.
they can be amplified, and you get these voices in your head and you get in your own way and you build a story, a narrative. And that's why narratives and stories are so powerful that, like you said,
Hmm.
right, just outside your door, you began your journey, and you can't think of as the unknowns as a unapproachable, but it is a dark unknown, but it's even darker when we climb ourselves and talk ourselves into a deeper hole and put all these things on top of
Hmm.
us that we're carrying to get in a way. And so when you mention um the fact that the trustworthiness of people, and the
Hmm.
internet's already right was providing opportunities for people to prey on people, and and
Right.
various what levels of awareness and IQ and sense of person, right? And once COVID
Hmm.
hit, it just was almost like an amplification to the world, like, okay, everybody out there, if you can tell a good story, and you don't have such good scruples, you can like you just mentioned, you can con somebody, right? You can into somebody believing anything you say if you're a good enough manipulator to find those weaknesses. And which is like,
Yeah.
when you hear these stories about you, as you mentioned, right? These people being taken advantage of and taking their entire money, or these people that prey on older people and steal all their money. It's just so insane. I think that's a result of just this inner turmoil demon in the United States of capitalism. We're democracy. We all say everything everybody says about freedom and democracy, but we're a capitalistic society that we're hungry and we're never satiated. And that's what that Japan is very powerful in my eyes, because it's sense of like the now and the sense of essence of who this your internal being in your experience of walking in that beautiful Japanese garden. And I left advertising when I decided I was going to be in advertising when I was 14 years old. But I left by the time I was 28 because I didn't want to use my creative energies to sell things that I didn't believe in. But I think that what you mentioned in terms of that trust issue is huge. Like, many people struggle with that of belonging. And like, when did you realize that learning to belong in your own life became one of the greatest challenges?
Oh, there's a lot there. Belonging, and it's funny because I was just telling somebody we're living in the age of trillionaires now, right?
At
That's quite
least one, and probably more coming.
billion's not enough. I need a trillion now. It just becomes kind of meaningless. It's at a certain point, it's like, what are you going to buy with that besides power? But I mean, I'm not on the road to be a billionaire myself. Just trying to make my way.
Right.
But when you were talking about the predatory people, and there's so many out there, and I'm not here to talk to them unless they're feeling bad about it. If they're feeling bad about it, maybe they could read my book and maybe do some inner child work
That's
and
great.
take a look at that. But for the most part, I'm reaching out to the people who that not bad, but maybe unwell. And when you're suffering from addictions and such, you do harm.
Right.
And I have a 22-year-old daughter, and when I was deep in drugs and alcohol, I did a lot of harm to her, and it took years and years for both of us. She worked out hard, and so did I, on repairing that relationship. The harm that I had done, she had nothing to do with it. Kids are never responsible for that, and I wasn't responsible for that when I was a kid and when I was scapegoated. And that's it's just to sort of circle back what you were talking about. I am blessed in so many ways, lucky, born on third base, all that stuff, and I see that and I know it. It's important, I think, to recognize when we have been through the ringer in some ways, but there's also levels, right? I mean, it's been traveling Southeast Asia. I saw really deep, deep poverty. I was in Sumatra, which is a section of Indonesia, which is really, I was thinking along the lines of like real, like, Africa poverty, where like the roads were literally broken, not just in disrepair, broken, like it would wreck your car
Structure,
to ride down the road. And the kids were like playing in the flood puddles and stuff. And it was just like, wow, really, really deep levels of poverty. But you found peace and happiness there too, in some ways. But also I thought, wow, I'm really lucky. I don't have to live without air conditioning in the 100-degree heat, which I saw a lot of that in Southeast Asia. There's not that many people in the West who have no air conditioning in 100-degree heat. There's some, but you know what I mean? There's levels. There's definitely levels of suffering.
right.
And so when you look at it globally, it's just like that. And so I would never criticize somebody else. I think about health problems. I've been lucky to have no major physical health problems, nothing chronic. I fell and hit my head a couple weeks ago. That kind of sucked, but I recovered. These kinds of things. I wouldn't tell somebody with major health problems, just to be grateful and get over it, that kind of thing.
Right.
It's like,
Right. That's
I don't know their experience. I would listen. And I would also probably say that I'm empathetic, but I don't have a way to relate. If I talk to somebody with addiction problems or, childhood trauma, emotional trauma, then it's that I have a little bit more of a, person to person ability to say, oh, I know how that feels, or I know something similar,
Yeah.
how that feels, so I can relate.
So,
So, all that kind of, I think,
mhm. So,
is what I would say.
so, I would tell you, like, the imagination, the title of my podcast is Imagine Fitting In. And
Mhm.
of course, that when we talk about fitness, the definition of fitness, if you ask most people, they'll come to some kind of understanding, maybe their self description of that or self identity of what that means or how it's been put forward. But it's
Yeah.
actually just the ability to perform. That's all that means.
Okay.
Ability to perform. And
Yeah.
in terms of, and I was always a super creative kid, and I still am. And as I mentioned to you, I just released my first debut album as Imagine.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you. As Imagine, right here on my shirt, IMGN, the artist.
Uh-huh.
Imagine the artist. And um, the titled album is one of my songs that I actually wrote when I was 30 years old, over 30 years ago. And it's titled Unfolding in Time. And I think that, when we talk about journaling and people trying to, get into the deep stuff and meeting people, imagination is key. Like, so what role did the imagination and fiction play in rebuilding, a life after the healing began? And like, how did that, how did your book steer you, or how did that journey go, wait, I'm going to write something that's engaging and in a whole other world of your own?
Yep. Yeah. That's a great question. Thank you. And again, congrats on the album, man.
Thank
I
you.
want to check it out. That's so awesome. And it makes me smile. And Imagine Fitting In is such a great title. And I
Thank you.
can think to myself, I never really fit in for a long time, but I feel that I do now. And it feels good. It's nice to know that I have a circle of friends, and it's beautiful.
Wonderful, wonderful.
The the creative stuff, I always sort of use drumming I would get on stage to fit in because I was good at what I did. And so, like, maybe you'll like me if you like my performance. And that was kind of a desperation thing. I do love drumming, but only for myself. And if you like it too, that's great. But I don't feel I need anybody's approval on that stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like that with the books now too, to a point. I mean, of course, I would be happy if somebody loves my book, but some people are going to like it, some people are not. And I write fiction and nonfiction, which the advice is like, go get a pen name, get two separate websites and whatnot. But I just didn't do that. I want to, I wrote my own healing story, Inner Child. That's the nonfiction. And it's called Wounded Angels. And I didn't intend to write nonfiction, but it just kind of came out in the middle of the work. And so that's me looking at the past, healing, and up to the present, what's going on. And then the fiction that I write has always been sci-fi. I write techno thrillers and science fiction, and it's kind of like what is it going to look like? How are we going to move forward together? What does the future look like? And everything's so dystopian. Everything we're living in now is so depressing that, like, I'm kind of aiming, especially now, the stuff that I'm coming out with in the coming months, I think has a real optimistic edge to it, because I'm kind of tired of hearing about how everything's gonna suck forever.
I'm
So, it's yeah.
I'm with you, and I don't mean to interrupt, and I want you to keep that stream of consciousness, that thought. But my writing and my music and my lyrics are in my latest writing. So it's interesting because you remember how I told you, said to you that it's about the experience of being alive. And so
Mhm.
the things I was writing back when I was 31 or 32 years old, 30 years ago, they're
Mhm.
timeless. And it was, and when you mention how it's dystopian and like it's all this negative energy and fear and negativity gets this attention because it wants to shock you, and you're like, oh, well, my gosh, what, and you can just work you up, and you have to realize, like, okay, if you shut that off, it's like getting rid of a really bad friend or a person that's just too negative, and you have to have some positivity. And my lyrics
Mm-hmm.
and my vibe is that I want to be highlighting where we're at now and what this vibe
Mm-hmm.
is, and as an artist, and like seeing. And I believe that artists like yourself we're like modern day shamans. We see things. We see things and we structure them in a way that's consumable. And it's like a painting. One person
Mm-hmm.
looks at it, they see one thing, they see essence of parts of their story that are reflective what they know, and then what's to be discovered in that painting. So in my
Yeah.
songs now, I'm like, wow, I feel so supercharged that I was reading my old stuff 30 years ago, and I'm like, this is stuff that anybody can read. Like, whoa, this is just relative. I like to think that my podcast is every single episode is timeless, because from the beginning of time, we're all trying to fit in and grow older and wiser and productive and have purpose. So this is why that's my edge. So I didn't want to start a fitness podcast, but when we talk wellness and health, but getting back to that
Mm-hmm.
positivity, right? What you say
Yeah.
is that you want there. That's the hero's adventure, and I like to think that all my music has a okay. We're recognizing where we're at. We 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 know there's more. We've seen more, especially in this country, right? Having everything, and we should have
Mm-hmm.
such gratitude. Because the best thing you can do, right, is you can tell the average person, if you said they're struggling, tell them to go to another country,
Yeah.
any country. It doesn't even matter, just any country. It's going to unfold, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unfold aspects of their life and realizations of like, wow, it's kind of nice back home. Wow, that comfort. I'm like, so it's a creature that I've become. But it's awesome. I applaud you
Mm-hmm.
for your adventure, your spirit. I'm also a drummer. I've only been drumming for like 11 years. I always wanted to be a drummer, but I was fascinated with
Okay.
music, and I've been singing for like 26 years, just from my, like, as you said, right? Because I like it. And it's like my own self meditation. But,
Right.
from yours, like after years away from fiction, you return to writing what, the Solarian Deep? Is that one of your books?
That's my latest book.
Your
Yeah.
The
And it's
Solarian
another,
Deep.
yeah, it's a sci-fi. And yeah, that's I started that one out as a serialized book, because the thing is, part of my story is when I was doing that emotional and spiritual healing for about 5 years, I had really heavy writer's block. I'd written 4 novels before that, and then I couldn't write anything from about 2019 until 2024, like nothing. And I wanted to, I tried to, I was like, should I just quit? What should I do? Am I just going to give up? And so I didn't write anything until about New Year's 2024, and suddenly I was able to write again after 5 years. And the Solarian Deep started pretty early there, and I just wanted to sort of get out there and do something. Like I didn't want to sit in a room and write a novel, so I serialized it and put it online, a chapter at a time. So I didn't know the ending when I started, and it was like, I'll just do a book about, like, dystopian, a distant future, but everybody has to go under the water to start over and that kind of thing.
That's cool.
And yeah, it just grew from there, and it turned into like a transformational kind of book. It's about transformation. It's about the societies getting along. The themes got bigger and bigger as I wrote. So now it's the first book of a series. It's called the Technaquatics, is what I came up with for the name of the society, Technaquatics that lived under the sea. And yeah, it just blew up. And this is sort of the new direction too, because it's my first fiction since the 5 year writer's block. I've got another book called The Vibrance, which is coming out soon. And that's I look at AI and robotics and stuff quite a lot too. My last book before the writer's block was called Emergence. That was about sort of like AI sentience and that kind of thing.
Yes.
The Vibrance sort of bounces off of that, and just, yeah, really looking at like kind of well, the Solarian Deep is distant future, because I had to make a reason why they go underwater, and there's no reason. Well, there might be a reason, hopefully not,
Right.
but like there's got to be a reason why the land is unlivable. It's not. That's not a big part of the plot. That's just something that happened, and that's why they're there.
Right.
That's what puts you there. And so that's distant future, but basically I usually write near future, like, and which is risky, because like I'm writing about AI sentience and robotics and whatnot. And like, well, if I got it wrong and something new comes out next year, then my book's not science fiction anymore. It's
Right.
antiquated, right?
Right.
So
Right.
I'm like trying to keep it, 'cause there's some amazing developments out there and some controversial ones too.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't know. To me, the writing is definitely the reason that my website is daviddeanhaskell.com. It's got the fiction and the nonfiction on there. Everybody said don't do that. Nobody's going to want to read both. But for me, it's a continuum. It's past, present, future. Writing about my healing journey, and you can maybe get something from it for yourself. And then into the sci-fi, which is what does the future look like for all of us? Yeah. So I don't do aliens. I don't do a million years from now, that kind of thing. It's
Right.
more like my first book was about security overreach at the airports. And I published it in 2013. And man, I'll tell you, things are worse than I imagined. It's like, it's traveling around
Sure.
for, through airport security. It's, yeah. So,
I like,
yeah.
I can understand and appreciate that just underwater and about like, is it livable? It's like, in terms of on land and you go under the sea and you start this adventure and it's like a great metaphor that of our being, right? We're here, right? We can only go, we
Yep.
can't go very far and not be present
No.
with our, right? Everywhere you go, there you are, to quote John Kabat-Zinn, that, it's that
Yep.
metaphor of like, wait, you're going under the water, but you're still on Earth in this space and place that you ultimately know, but you're seeking a grander adventure. And those going back to, the alchemist of that path, right? That dark path or that unknown. And it can be uncomfortable, but there's this, it's almost like this pathway, like there is this unique path for every single person that's suffering from addiction and confusion and wanting to understand where they come from, where they are, who what's about. And that, we know that purpose is a really strong thing to consider once we kind of come out of the darkness in terms of like, as your storytelling and writing. And I applaud you for going against what they say. Oh, don't do that. Well, you know what? I look at that as a writer, as an artist, because, I drum, I sing, I paint, photography. I create a podcast. I've created an ultimate physiological educational program for sports now, and we're trying to get into education for the creative side. So my essence, David, essence, I'm an artist, but my passion is fitness and wellness. And that through that psychological temple, you can launch yourself. But one of the biggest things I believe that the American education system is lacking is this awareness of like what we have, the gratitude and civics and understanding what these kids have no clue on why they're there. And they're living in the greatest time in history in the greatest country in the world in terms of this time. And we're all of a sudden going, oh no, it's the end of the world. There's nothing left for us. But no, you're empowered so much. Like we're doing this television. I've got a television station in my back room and we're talking across the world and we can share these potentials. And I think that, the storytelling and the writing, the creative side. So I believe that the creative self and encouraging people to write, to share, to speak, any kind of form of artistic expression, it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter with the outcome when it comes out. It's that you're doing it. And that something that I go back to when they say to you, don't do that, don't do fiction, nonfiction on one identity. Well, that's like somebody coming up and telling me, like, no, move that stroke of paint off that you're painting that way. I go step aside or leave the room and be quiet because I don't care. Right. Just like the fact that I don't care what somebody thinks about me. Oh my gosh, I surely don't care about what they think I create or how I create it and how I go about doing it because this is the way. Well, this is supposedly probably some of the biggest reasons why we have these addictions, right? Everybody's going, yeah, this is who you should be. This is the way to get there. And you are spellbounding right? You're spellbounding in your own world and found your light, which you knew was there. And you're like,
Yeah.
you sound like you're like me. Just I'm running around now chasing my happy tail, and I have got so much to create and give. So I mean, what's the biggest thing about what's the biggest thing message about the Solarian Deep, correct?
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah.
biggest message in that like what inspired you for that name, and what do you hope people could get from reading the story?
Oh, thank you. That's a deep and awesome question. Um, Even as you're talking about it, it's making me think. I think the theme of Solarian Deep is be yourself, actually. And it's very transformational. I sort of wondered a little bit if it isn't related in some sense to the trans community, because like a lot of people go through a lot of that with the self-identity stuff.
That's deep. That's
Um,
deep.
and I'll let other people make that decision when they read the book. But um, the Solarians are the other society. This is the thing. It's sort of a first contact story too, but it's on Earth. And so the Technoquatics are the ones we meet at first, and then the Solarians we meet a little bit later. So I'm not going to get too into them because it's spoilers. But they live in the deep, which is a section of the ocean literally called the deep. And yeah, but it's definitely a be yourself. There's conformist stuff that some of the two girls that are the main characters of the Technoquatic Society, they're orphans and they're being sort of, if you have this, if you have enough money and you can afford to, deck yourself out with like Technoquatic gear, and then you'll be okay. Then you'll be, and they start to realize that that's not what it's all about. And so, yeah, be yourself, actually is a big theme in that book.
That's that's a great message.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
You know, I I can't help to think of one of my clients worked on was a production accountant for Avatar, and I had the privilege of being able to walk through, not quite into his office of James Cameron's headquarters in
Yeah.
California, and
Mm.
your stories remind me of that, the Avatar, and that place where it's like our imagination knows that we can live a better life, and we can, when you mentioned about societies around the world getting along, and that's a big message about
Mm.
my song and my songwriting, and my now vehicle of music is about the humanity,
Mhm.
in that when we have so many tools here at your disposal, as you mentioned, no
Mm.
roads, no basic whatever the conditions, horrific,
Oh
thinking
yeah,
about it,
yeah.
and the fact that we have so much ample supplies and resources that are endless, and it's just
I,
it's just so discouraging to think that people are almost so distracted and over distracted about the negativity of
mm.
what's happening, and they don't have this whatever right now, and
Mhm.
understanding that they're in a really great space. So what would you say to what would you say to a person that is you know feeling lost and confused, and is your current book, is it going to be, it's a, as you mentioned, you have one, where can we what other past books and writings have you done that to highlight
Mhm.
terms of titles?
Well, I have 6 novels out, and you can find them all on Amazon. And you can, if you go to my website, daviddeanhaskell.com, you can find all of them. The nonfiction is called Wounded Angels, and based on what you were just saying, I was thinking, um, in terms of finding, because yes, we have such amazing opportunities, we really do. I published all of my books by myself from my computer in Japan in America.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, literally English language paperback as well. Right. You can physically get any of the print on demand. Especially the nonfiction, people are buying the paperback more than the ebook because people want to hold it,
Yes.
which is great. And so I was able to do these incredible things, but I would also say you got to take care of your health first. And that's where Wounded Angels comes in, because I think, and your podcast is about health as well. I see 4 types of health. Maybe there's more: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And I often do like a check-in on like, how's my, because those 4 can be very widely different on a given day. I could be like physically in a really bad space, my back's killing me or something like that. Mentally, I'm kind of in a brain fog, but emotionally, I'm doing okay. Spiritually, I'm doing great. And then there's all kinds of you know, but you have to be able to be self-aware and be doing that stuff, and be doing the kind of hygiene stuff, like a little bit of exercise, a little bit of reflection and meditation, a little bit of prayer. All that stuff has to go into it. And I learned over the years, as I say, from Jordan and other people, how to do that. And so now I am able to more embrace the opportunities, take advantage of the technologies that, I mean, man, I'm proud of my website now.
Nice.
It used to be the worst train wreck. Like for years, I was like, oh, God, I wouldn't even tell you my website. I was like, it was horrible. But like with this like AI tech,
yeah,
I don't have $1 million to pay a web designer, but I just did it myself. I was able to in the last few months, which that blows my mind, and this stuff is all tools, right? It's neither good nor bad. It could be misused.
Of course, absolutely.
But the fact is, we do have, most of us, if you're on a computer watching this podcast, you probably have access to a lot of the stuff. If you have a phone, you could literally do it off of your phone.
Right. I myself,
these kind of things. So
yeah. I myself just published my own book on Amazon of poetry, and it's called The Reflective Self.
Oh, wow.
The Reflective Self.
Awesome.
And The Reflective Self. And those happened to be those poems that I wrote over 30 years ago, majority of them. And here, modern day, I've taken them to be created into songs. And so it's kind of like really a spiritual enlightenment and kind of going through like an inner revolution. But when you said, the fact that this ability to present yourself and find that balance, as I am the balance professor. If you go to that, the balance professor is that balance of you have to first have to know all the elements of awareness, right? Awareness of all the elements that you have to be able to address those 4 that you mentioned. And once you have that awareness, you can begin to kind of like walk through it. And it's wonderful that you found a mentor like Jordan. And I'm sure you're like me. My intention is to pass it forward, in that even more now today, and especially in this country, our young men are kind of very troubled and are in crisis. And we as men that have walked the path previously, we need to pass it forward. So, I believe that your books and your imagination, your writing and your endeavors, congratulations on your book, your books, The Enlightenment. Thank you so much for sharing so much about your world and a bit of your story. And again, I only hope to be able to inspire people trying to get engaged, purchase a book and maybe carry it in hand, and turn off all the whatever the distractions and get more interpersonal on a level. So thank you so much, Deane. David Deane Haskell.
David Deane Haskell, yeah.
Everybody check out his website, David Deane Haskell. And obviously you can find all your work on, Amazon goes by David Deane Haskell as well, obviously. Yeah. And so I look forward to breezing through that. And David, I thank you so much for spending time with us. You're all the way over there in Japan, and I will probably definitely be looking you up.
Thanks so much, Greg. It's been an honor to be on, and I really appreciate the connection. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Okay, everybody. Till next time, kids. Bye-bye.
too.